We're back, Eric and I, Jonathan, back with the Ekklesiacast. Chris is away today. Looking forward to him being back tomorrow. But for us, it's just us two today with the Ekklesiacast. So we're going to talk a little bit about Kevin Smith being at church yesterday and gathering with us, sharing about his work that the Lord's doing through him in the Ukraine, and then talk a little bit more about our reading that we've been doing. So,
yeah, sounds good. Well, I mean, one thing that I think has been super neat, and I don't know, I think it's just something more or less that I guess to say has organically happened is we've been introduced to kind of new missionaries that even One Life we didn't know before, and I just maybe the dynamic of us coming together, and we've talked a lot about missions and missions focus, so I feel like we've been very open with having people come in and. And on that, just to communicate to people, like I think we're bringing people in, and then we want to have the connection. And then if anyone feels like they want to contribute in any way to that, we would encourage them to do so. But we're not expecting everyone to do that with every person. But there's just something neat about getting exposure. So, we had Key of Hope recently, which was, just really neat to learn from Dan Smithers, right? The ministry that's going on there, and then from Kevin Smith and what's going on in Ukraine. One thing I found super fascinating from both of them was how much like Dan used that illustration of the suffering he went through with his finger and how the Lord used that, and then you hear Kevin's story of his back and being laid up for 2 years, but that's what birthed this call to become a missionary. But then he had this military background and how the Lord has clearly used that, how he strategically thinks through things. He thinks like a military man, which was just awesome to see that, how the Lord uses that. But just really blessed. A lot of times with situations like this, particularly when there's like a war and something that really tugs at our heartstrings, people can be very kind of polemical and almost, you're not a believer unless you do this. And I felt his call was just what you should do by looking at what's going on in Ukraine is be faithful to serve in God's kingdom. Here's the need we have over here. Was it 63 different spots need small groups and churches? However, there's need all over the kingdom. And I felt that was really, really mature. And you could just tell it's a guy that's walked by faith in the valley of the shadow of death and has learned that the Lord is with him. Just really enriching. Very blessed by it. Yeah,
at the end of his message, I appreciate that illustration he used of a senior citizen somewhere in Michigan that was drawing a picture. I think it was the thing that, and I didn't get to see it because I was having to watch online, but did he show the picture?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm assuming he did. But she drew a picture if you weren't here, and he took it with them to Ukraine, and we were passing them out. And it was just a way that she was able to minister through him and be a blessing. Let the people in Ukraine know that someone in the U.S. was praying for them. So, which was a good illustration of that very fact. Like there's different ways in which the Lord calls us. He doesn't all call us to go to the Ukraine and minister.
Yeah. So. Yeah. But yeah, it was, I don't know. To me, I was like, that was just because I think his agenda was to call people to serve in Christ's kingdom. And it's something we always need to be on guard for, is like, we can have agendas that don't necessarily align with that. And that's where it just was very appropriate. And because at the same time, he had a very, very clear laid out vision, like, and next steps. And this is what you need to do. This is how you can be part of us. This is where the need is. But then at the same time, just called everyone to faithfulness wherever they call. And man, Lord willing, maybe I would pray though that there would be people of Ecclesia either as a short-term mission trip, or perhaps there are people in our midst that would feel a need to say, you know what, I want to help start one of those churches. Wouldn't that be cool?
Yeah. Amen. It's interesting because we had a gentleman from the Ukraine a couple of months ago, and he was involved with the military. I don't remember him getting into this. Did Kevin ever get into does he have any relationship with the military with his background in the Ukraine, or is it just his history more feeds into that?
He didn't say anything about that, not that I recall, but I think, just his history. I mean, obviously living in a war zone
Mhm.
for one,
Yeah.
but then how he thinks through things.
Yeah, it's
I think that his
interesting.
experience is present there. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I know it's hard. I know that we were talking before the podcast about a lot of missionaries left the Ukraine, and when everything started going down, and the Lord called them to stay there, which is pretty amazing.
Yeah, the crazy thing about it, because I don't think he shared this publicly. That's what we're talking about. I'm pretty sure this was a private conversation. Like he was apprenticing to be a missionary when the war hit. Still has not learned the language. His wife knows the language, but he doesn't, and everyone left, even the one person he was apprenticing under, and he was told to leave, but he felt called to stay, and to this day he still does not speak fluent. I think it's Ukrainian is the or Russian, which is a common trade language too. In there, he can't speak either one of those fluently. I guess just again another reminder is like oftentimes we think we got to have it all figured out to serve the Lord. Here he is. He's just walking by faith, and the Lord is equipping him for the task. Like look at the results of what's happening. So
yeah, and there over Christmas, Tracy and I had an interaction with someone that we were close friends with when we lived in Wisconsin, and this family is heavily involved in the deaf ministry in their church. They live now in Ohio, and we were interacting a little bit on Facebook, and they're inviting us to come visit them sometime. And so we were just talking about that. And I had forgotten about this story, that when we were in Wisconsin, somehow or another, Tracy and I struck up a relationship with this couple who was in charge of the deaf ministry in Wisconsin, but also with some of the deaf people that were in our church in Wisconsin. We don't know any sign language at all, besides like the simple "I love you" and stuff like that. And this couple that's now in Ohio has been apparently using us as an illustration for these years of like we used to, there's this man named Wesley, and we used to drive him to church pretty regularly. And we would interact with him and try to talk to him. And he could read lips a little bit, but not super well. And it was always kind of a comedy, but we were kind of part of the deaf ministry, even though we had no way of communicating with the deaf. And it was just like, we would just, were involved, and we had no time really at the time to learn sign language. So it was just like, well, we'll engage in the way that we can and minister to them and help and drive Wesley to church, and had a few encounters where we would have like conversations with him where there is clearly something being lost in translation, where he's like trying to communicate like do this, and we couldn't because we had no idea what he was saying. But you can engage with people that maybe don't have all of the skills yet to engage with them, whether it's about the gospel in a foreign language or whether it's just ministry in general. You don't have to have all your ducks in a row to minister for the Lord. And
yeah. Growing up, one of my favorite baseball players was Cal Ripken Jr. And he has received the title of being baseball's Iron Man, and he set the record for most consecutive games played. I believe it was over 2,300 consecutive games, which was equivalent to 15 or 16 seasons. He played without missing a single game. And he wrote a book, and this is where the point is. The title of the book was Just Show Up. And the whole theme of it was so much can be accomplished by just showing up. Like show up and do your job. And that, I think that illustrates your point you're sharing, is just many times, man, we just need to show up. Like show up, be there when we should. Like we don't have to have it all figured out. You play through injury, you play all of that like he did. Just show up. So much can be accomplished for the kingdom by doing that. So that's all you guys did. You showed up, and we're open for the Lord to use you.
Yeah, that's totally off topic. But in the back of my mind, the other book that comes to my mind that I've read that's sports related, it's a little bit similar to that, is one by Lance Armstrong from the cycling world. It's called "It's Not About the Bike," which it's about
just roid up was the name of it right now.
It is like, it's not about the bike, but it is about the drugs. Like, sorry, that's
what was the actual name of the book?
It's Not About the Bike. was the
Okay.
so it was, a typical like work hard type cycling book. Like it's
He wrote it before everyone knew he took roids.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah.
Yeah, that's
Sorry,
funny.
I know it's off topic.
That book did not age well for him.
No, it did not. It's like anyway.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Cool. Good stuff. Anything else you wanted to share about?
I don't think so. I mean, I'm sure that there were a lot of things in in his message yesterday that just, I think spoke to everybody that was able to hear it. Can't think of any off the top of my head at the moment, but yeah, I think we hit the highlights. Oh,
yeah.
So we're continuing to work through this book that Eric, Chris, and I have been reading, and it gets to this. We're in the middle of, I think it's chapter 3, where it's getting to an illustration, and the illustration of a beer company that is producing beer, and you've got a retailer, a wholesaler, and then
the brewery.
The brewery. Yeah, there you go. And so they get into this cycle where there is a run on demand, if I'm remembering this correctly. There's a run on demand that the retailer is trying to pump out like as much beer as he possibly can sell. And so he's putting in orders for more beer, and he's putting that into his wholesaler, and his wholesaler is only able to produce so much because only so much is coming from the brewery. So he's putting in orders, and every week he's putting in orders for more, and he's only getting like his typical lot. And the wholesaler, I believe at the same time, is doing the same thing back to the brewery, right? So he's going back to the brewery asking like, hey, like my retailers are asking for this much and you're only giving me this much. And so he ends up continuously asking for more and more as the brewery is slowly ramping up production. Because underlying that was I can't remember what the impetus was behind all this.
There was a music video, a popular music video that the artist mentioned. I think the example used Lover's Beer was the name of it. So
so that was driving a temporary run on production that then is trickling down through the distribution system that's reaching the brewery, and they're slowly ramping up production. But then by the time production gets ramped up, they have lost the window of opportunity. That then leads kind of backwards through the chain to a massive oversupply that then trickles back down through to the retailer.
Yeah, so. And the interesting thing I thought in the illustration was the sales actually did consistently stay ramped up, but not as high as because they went from 4 cases a week to 8. But because of the delay, and there's always a delay. Like no one was ready for the delay. The retailer ended up ordering more than they need because they wanted to have enough in stock. And then that in turn, the wholesaler thinks they need more because their orders are now increasing. And then the brewer has to hire more people and to do it. And all of a sudden, like everyone's stuck with a large inventory, which also just made me hit me how hard it is to run a product business. Holy cow. Yeah.
I didn't think of this when I was reading this, but when I was, when Tracy and I were dating, I was saving up to buy her an engagement ring. So I worked at Kroger in Grand Blanc, and I also worked at Genesee Christian. And at the time, I don't know if they still have this, but we had like a daycare that was run all through the summer. So I was working at the daycare. So I worked a lot. Went in at like 7 a.m. to the daycare, worked till 3:30, 4:30 something, then went to work at Kroger from like 5 till 1 or 2 in the morning. So I was working a lot. But one of the things that happened was I had like one day off that was guaranteed a week, and it was my day off. And I think I went golfing with my brother. And I'm out there on the golf course, and I get a call from Kroger that they needed people to come in. And so I don't think I went in right away. I came in a little bit later. But what had happened was almost everybody from our store south all the way over to, I think, like New York, had lost power. There was some massive power outage in the United States. And our store was like the first grocery store on the other side of the power outage that had electricity. So we were getting like slammed by people coming in buying last minute groceries, and it was a nightmare. Well, anyway, one of the things that everybody was buying was water. So we sold out of water like in the first day. But then later on in the summer, apparently our systems were managed by a computer that recognized like when people were purchasing stuff. And so it would just go ahead and just order more. And there was nobody checking to see like, is there some issue? So we ended up with, in the middle of the summer, had a huge supply of water. Like we had pallets and pallets of water in the aisles.
So real life, you've seen this in real life as the retailer.
Yeah.
Wow.
That was crazy. And we had water like all summer. It was such a pain in the neck because you're having to work around it. We were having to like put it in aisles, and I don't know how I didn't remember that, but I just remembered it now. So same things happening here in this chapter. So
yes, super interesting. And so the first of all, the beer game is used. I know it's used in the automotive industry. This is like a standard for people, like not necessarily I think for those on the line, but like engineers and people like probably if there's engineers listening to this, they've probably discussed the beer game before. Like from my experience, it's a pretty common thing because it's just it's a picture of what can happen through all of these chains that in connections that happen. But I believe the point the author was making, because at the end of it, the retailer was upset with the wholesaler. The wholesaler was upset with the brewer, and the brewer was upset with the wholesaler and the retailer. Like everyone was really upset with each other, and they were blaming one another for the problem they all now had. And probably I think the brewer in this situation is one that gets hurt the most, like the original creator of the product, but what was happening is not understanding the big picture and really what's going on and how each other operates and what's necessary for the beer to get made and then to get to the wholesaler, and no one understanding the delay in that process, because for the brewer to increase their production, they've got to hire more people. Like that's a long process. Everyone just got upset at each other, and then everyone had an overstock of beer is what happened. So the point the author was making is these people made each other out to be enemies, but the problem was not personal. It was actually structural. But they made it personal. And then to flesh that out, he's saying more often than not, many of our relationship problems in life are actually due to structural problems, but we make them personal. Is that a fair summary of the point? Okay.
Yeah, which I think relates in many ways to what we're doing just together as a church, like, and especially even to borrow Paul's analogy from Corinthians, says the church is like a body, like a physical body, and we each have unique roles in the midst of that body where we're serving. And where Paul says, what if everybody was just an eye and you just had this big eye rolling around church? Like, well, how weird would that be, and how dysfunctional would that be? So Paul looks at that structure and talks about how the body is related to one another and how it's dependent on each other. And it's necessary for us as a church, even as individuals, as we serve the Lord in his kingdom, to understand the unique roles and calling of God on our life, unique roles and callings of others, and to see the big picture and not allow what may be a difference in gifting or a difference in passion or a difference in ministry responsibility to derail it and make this into a personal battle where we're just different responsibilities, different roles, different tasks.
Yeah, that's good. And I think, in particular as believers, is we really, but we have to have the knowledge of this in our minds, but really need to work hard of not taking things personally. Like, and when there is a conflict or we're feeling something or feeling someone has done something to us, is think really trying to take the time to pause and reflect. And first of all, let's say John and I, which at some point in our years we haven't yet, but we're gonna have probably, if we tear, we're gonna have some disagreement, something that's gonna come up, something we're gonna have to have this conversation. Either I say something or you say something.
And Lance Armstrong was a legitimate athlete. How about that?
Let's go. But let's just say there's something I say that I don't know, in the moment, it's just very offensive. I say something very offensive to you. And the way for you to process that would be say, okay, did Eric wake up this morning with a goal and agenda to say, you know what? I'm going to hurt John. I hope you would say, I know Eric and I know what his intention is, and his intention is never to hurt me. It's only to help. So if he said something, there's probably something else going on. Like, that's how we want to treat those things, is try to take a step back and look. A lot of times what you'll find out when situations like that happens is there probably would be something going on in my life. Maybe, maybe I had an argument with my wife, or, there's a death in my family that I didn't talk to you about yet, or something. Like, usually there's something else going on. And again, I think that applies to this. Like, don't take it personal. What's going on in that person's life and structure that's causing this and contributing to this. So,
and what you said,
even down to the personal level. Yeah.
I mean, you may not even be actually being offensive too. That's the other thing, is it could be that I'm taking it as an offense because
of something going on in your life.
Yep, exactly. Or because we're just communicating different. We each come to the table with different vocabulary. We talk about things differently. We interpret things differently. Like I said at the start of this, that we have different giftings and passions. And so very often that may lead us to we may communicate something, for instance, very short and blunt, because hey, this isn't a big deal to me. I'm just trying to tell you, here's the problem. And somebody else may hear that and be like, you're telling me that I'm failing.
Right.
You're saying it in such a blunt way. And I'm taking huge offense to that. And it's well, no, that's really not what's going on here. I'm just communicating, here's the issue, here's the problem, and just trying to say it.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, it could be both ways. Yeah, I remember when my wife and I, we first got married. It's kind of funny looking back now, but I don't know. I was super sensitive to her words, and if you get to know my wife, she's just a very expressive, passionate person, very outgoing personality, and just so sometimes she would say things and I would totally interpret it like she was challenging me or questioning my manhood. And she's like, no, I'm just talking to you. What's wrong? And I remember during that time I made the request, sometimes could you just put it in the form of a question rather than a statement that could help me? And to my wife's credit, she did that. Now I'm kind of looking back, yeah, kind of a wimp, I guess. But I think I've got some thicker skin now. But still, I think that was actually good though for us to communicate. I guess looking at that probably related to something. I was in my early 20s, and my background made me, I think, a little more sensitive to things like that. So again, to be able to talk to that, because the other end of that is if I would have never communicated that and let that build up year after year, to this day, if that didn't address, and that was my mode of operating, our relationship would be terrible, because I would be underneath the surface just always she just doesn't respect me, she's questioning me, which is not the case at all. We're, by having that communication, I think we put a structure in place that we actually have very open dialogue with each other. And so
yeah, which I think is something this chapter is. I can't remember specifically if he gets into addressing it yet, or if he's just forward looking right now in this chapter, but it is something that I believe he's going to get to, is the necessity to have some channels that are some communication bridges between these different points in the chain that allow for communication of, okay, here's what's really going on, to break down some of those roles and just talk, to communicate, which I think all of us who've been married for more than 3, 4, or 5 years probably understand how important that is. If you're going to succeed, you've got to be able to at some point get past whatever it is that you're arguing about to actually communicate about what the problem is, because very often it has nothing really to do with either one of you. It's just a problem that you got to fight together.
Yeah, but most of it is you're actually usually dealing with your own insecurities and your own like your own related to your upbringing or whatever happened in your life. It's like that's what marriage does, and having children takes that to a whole nother level, right? Like you got to confront your selfishness and all of these things, and so
yeah,
that's good. So I guess we just kind of went into marriage, didn't have that plan, but let's talk about as a church fellowship, and then I also think there's some good insight here for us in the workplace of how we can take this and I think be better servants in our workplace. But and as you're reading through this chapter, how did you see that this could kind of rear its head within the fellowship?
Yeah, so I mean, some we've somewhat already touched on is those just in the relationship service portion of our fellowship is for instance, if you're a ministry leader, what you are passionate about and what we want you to be passionate about is your ministry. Like, we hope that would be something that would enthuse you and that you would be pouring your life into. But what you have to understand is that your ministry isn't the church in total. And you are going to be extraordinarily frustrated if you think that your ministry is the church in total, or that everyone needs to just like stop and participate in what you're doing. Because we're not all passionate about that particular thing, and we don't all have the same objectives in the small, like in the microscopic issues of your particular ministry. And so that I think is one half of the equation, and the other half is like your ministry. You need to see how your ministry is fitting into the larger whole of what we're doing as a church. And if you think your ministry is the whole of the church, you're going to be frustrated. And I think if you don't see how your ministry fits into the grand scheme of what we're doing, you're likewise going to be frustrated because the rest of the church is going to be going that way and you're going to be going this way. And so I think that's perhaps one way in which this could relate to us.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really good. I'm gonna go a little different way too on this. As was listed, I think one thing we can take away is to know that our actions, what we do in the workplace, what we do on social media, what we do in our volunteer organizations, coaching, sports team, whatever we do, affects our local fellowship that we represent, which also then that local fellowship affects it communicates a message of what the church is about, which ultimately affects the kingdom. So like our individual work is connected to kingdom work. And our attitude, I mean, how we are on Sunday and when we have visitors every Sunday, like we're all communicating something, whether we realize it or not, of who we are, who Jesus is. I think that's a big takeaway, is for us to understand that everything we do is connected to the bigger piece of the kingdom of God. And can we look at that and say, man, I'm glad that, if someone watches my life, that they'll see the gospel communicated, they'll see love communicated. Is that what they see? So I think for us I think more often than not, we feel like we're insignificant, even as believers, and what we do doesn't matter. But having this view, it turns that upside down. Like, no, everything we do matter. It's communicating something about who Jesus is, who his church is. In everything we do, we are connected to this larger kingdom. And I think that's a pretty important takeaway.
Yeah. This may be a little far afield, but something in seminary that I had a class. It was the biggest headache of seminary. I'll tell you what.
And it wasn't Greek or Hebrew?
No, it was
Yeah.
not. It was what I thought was going to be an easy class, and ended up just being a nightmare. But we read several. It was on half of the class was apologetics, which that part wasn't terrible. But the other part was Christian worldview, which I thought would be easy peasy. But we read through several books that kind of discuss this on a broad, what we're talking about on a broad cultural level, and how is a culture, our means of communicating has been changing and evolving over the years. With, for instance, one of the books we read was Amusing Ourselves to Death. I don't know if you've read that book. It's an awesome book. It's written by what's the guy's name? I can't remember it now. He's not a believer. He may have been Jewish, but he was writing about how the Israelites were radically different in their approach to God from all the different cultures around them, and that they were a people of a book, and they were communicating through a book, about a book. They were learning, so it was increasing their literacy. And he was just contrasting, not from a biblical worldview, just contrasting the uniqueness of their culture. And he was bringing that then front and center with the introduction of the television at the time. And I'm sure this even greater extent with the introduction of the internet, how that has changed the way that we communicate with each other. And so we read that book in seminary. We read another book called Ideas Have Consequences by a guy named Richard Weaver, which I've
read that book.
You've read that book?
Yeah.
Are you still have your headache from? That one was a tough one to read. And then we read some other work, but what all of those were getting to in the midst of our class was how, as culture is changing, we are losing our ability to communicate within the culture with each other on really important issues, because we're falling into just dealing with tweets now, where we're communicating over that kind of stuff. And in the midst of that in class, we were just talking about the unique challenges that were now facing us in communicating the gospel to a world that has shifted over a couple of generations from being people that were primarily driven by dialogue and long-term discussion and actually interacting with ideas, to now we're dealing with tweets. And so I think I know it's a little bit further afield from this book, but it does, I think, get at that issue of communicating with the lost around us. Like, there's some heavy lifting that we need to learn how to do to communicate the gospel in a culture that is so far removed from the idea of going to a book, studying ideas, exploring those ideas, talking about those ideas, and then receiving or rejecting them. And it's, I don't know, there's probably a whole lot there we could explore later, but it's something else that I think this book somewhat touches on, in the necessity to communicate differently. So
Yeah.
Getting the big picture, seeing what's going on. So
yeah, that's really good. Yeah. And I think just to think through that, like, our actions have consequences. What we do,
mm-hmm.
we're not insignificant. In particular, like, we are redeemed image bearers. Like, we have value to the Lord, like that He sent His Son to die on the cross for our sins, and then He didn't remove us. He's left us here. Like, He didn't. Once we were saved, He didn't just take us away into our eternal abode. He's left us here for a purpose. And that purpose is to represent His kingdom, to be ambassadors, as Kevin was talking about yesterday, right? Like,
yeah.
You've been made new creations to be ambassadors, and if ambassador doesn't do their job, they get fired. And yeah, just really good stuff. So let's go another route. I think something I would encourage the believers listening to this too to take away is, one thing that we desire to do is to be faithful in our place of employment. And I think Christians, unfortunately, can be guilty of this, of perpetually complaining about their company, their culture, that people don't know what they're doing. But I would encourage everyone to kind of take away from this is to take a moment to try to understand wherever you work what the process is. What is your business about? What is the product? And understand that if that product is not sold or service is not sold, I should say product or service, you don't have a job.
Mhm.
So like
Which
it's
means you don't have money, which means you don't eat.
exactly. So it's like many times we work in this area that's totally disconnected from acquiring new clients and so on and so forth. But I think to understand that is very, very helpful, and to understand the difficulties involved with that. So, for instance, right now I work as a hospice chaplain. Like my only job is when I get visits added on my tablet is to call those people and to go pray with them and share the gospel with them and talk with them. However, there's a lot of other things at play in the company, and what happens there does affect what I do. But like I if I'm, I guess understanding that is helpful. Like that,
Mhm.
like we need to find new people that are that come on hospice, and we provide support and care for them in all these different ways. So like, for me to understand that is very helpful for me to do my job and to be faithful in it. And I would just encourage the believers to know, like, your job is to be faithful with what the Lord has stewarded you, whatever responsibility that is within your company.
Mhm.
So maybe try to take a moment to actually think through the structure of that's going on and understand that things aren't as easy as we probably think they are.
Mhm.
So that would be my takeaway.
Yeah. 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 I hope I didn't share this story before, but one story that kind of demonstrates this a little bit to not seeing the connections that should have been made. When I was working in the secular workplace, one of the jobs I had was I was a security guard at this big retirement complex called St. Therese Southwest. It was in Minneapolis. It was an 11-story retirement complex, and then next door we had a memory care wing that was connected by a tunnel. And at 11 o'clock or midnight, somewhere around there, I was supposed to go to the other side of the building, and I had a responsibility to do some kind of key exchanges with the nurses' aides and stuff like that. Like they had to give us like their driver's license, and they got their keys, and it was this whole check-in process that I had to do. So I went over there, and I'm supposed to be checking in and out the nurses. But when I was whenever I'd leave my office, I would forward the calls from our office phone to my cell phone. So to the company's cell phone. So I forwarded the calls from our office phone to my cell phone, and I'm walking through the tunnel. I get a phone call, and in the middle of the phone call, I answer it, and it's this lady, and she's like, "There's a man in the parking lot beating a woman." And I was like, "Oh man!" And then in the background, I hear profanity, just like a ton of profanity flying. And I'm like, "Oh my goodness, I need to call 911 like right now." So I get off the phone with her and I call 911, and the 911 operator's like, "Well, we'll send police are on their way, but could you try and get us more information, like what side of the building it's on, where, if you give us a description of the guy." And I was like, "Okay." So I go out to our parking lot. There's not a car in the parking lot anywhere. And I'm looking around. I can't find it. And so I um I I go back to the office and I try to call the lady back based on the apartment number she gave me, and I look up the number and it doesn't match. And I'm like, "What? How is that possible?" And I'm thinking through, like, I know she called me, and then it like hit me like, wait a second, the calls are forwarded to my cell phone. So I had no idea where in our complex this lady was calling from. And I was like, I wonder if she's from the memory care side. And I get out our memory care book and I look it up by her number and by her apartment number, and then they match the name that she gave me. I was like, "Oh man, this could be bad." But I'm remembering like, oh, but there was swearing in the background, so certainly something must have been going on. So I call the lady back. And I'm like, the police are on their way, and they just wanted some extra information. Can you try to tell me where this was happening? And she's like, "Oh, you don't. The police don't need to come." And I'm like, "Oh no!" I'm like, "Please don't." And she's like, "There." It was just a guy cleaning out his car. And I was like, "Really?" I was like, "Well, what was all the profanity then?" And she's like, "Well, it was my husband. He was yelling out the window at the guy." And I'm just like, so some poor soul out in the middle. There's an apartment complex next door to the memory care side. And some poor guy was out cleaning out his car at 11 o'clock at night, and there's an old man screaming
at him,
and he's from the window. We had to call the police, and then the police, like 8 police officers, showed up. Late. They came blazing in with lights and sirens, and by that time they had heard from dispatch that something wasn't quite what was expected. So the police officer just walks in with a huge smile on his face, and I'm just like, "So." I was like, "I think what you're going to find is there's some confusion going on and miscommunication between all of us." And he goes up and talks to the lady, and he comes down and he's like, "Yeah, they're just really confused." And I was like, "Yeah." And they left, and it was so funny. But I was really embarrassed because I don't know. It was hilarious all around. But all of that just demonstrates a little bit of the inability to see the system that was failing underneath technological glitches and other things that I had no clue that once I saw the full picture,
right,
made total sense as to why
what had gone wrong. And yeah.
Which if I had been in my office and I saw that the call was coming from the memory care wing, I probably would have been much more cautious about calling the police and getting more information before I called. But didn't know that, and had no clue that when I was in the tunnel that I wasn't going to know what building people were coming from. So anyway.
I think a great example too of how easy it is for things to go wrong. You know, Murphy's Law says that anything that can go wrong will. That's not talking about all things in life. It's talking about within a structure. It's applied to like a system and structure. So as you look at your systems and structure, anything that can go wrong typically will. You'll eventually come up against the breakdown in that structure or that system. So now it's like for you in the future, you're probably always, if it got forwarded to you, you had a way to make sure you knew which part of the complex it was from, because it's just like that's what happens. So
yeah, my boss would always come in because she liked to work the late shift. So she would come in at like 2 a.m. and she'd like, "What happens to you on your shift?" Like, because I'd have to fill out incident reports for all of this stuff. And she's like people there's not incident reports for weeks. And then you show up and there's like 8. I'm like, I don't know.
So here's the truth of what probably working is you're probably the only one writing them down.
Yeah, probably.
Honestly, that's probably what the breakdown of that system was, is you had a lot of people doing this and you were there actually doing your job, doing it faithfully. Say, "Oh no, this is what the job requires."
Yeah, that's probably true. I didn't think about that.
Probably
at the time,
more of what's actually what happened there.
Yeah. The system. It's not working.
There's a lack of oversight and people reporting tends to, so.
Oh, I was diligent. I'll tell you what.
So you're diligent, but then it looks like it makes them question, well, what the heck are you doing, John? That's causing that. But in actuality, the problem, the reality was you were probably the only one doing your job and writing down and recording what happened.
Yeah. I mean, my job was literally sit in my office till something goes wrong. So, and it just always.
But other people did that same job.
Yeah.
And they didn't have the incident. It's like, to me, it's like, there's no way there's no way they did not have incidents and you had them all.
Yeah. Yeah. It was fun. It was an exciting job. I had stories every day. So anyway, well, good to be together with everybody. Anything else that we need to close with or good?
No, I think that's good. Yeah. Just try to think, don't take things personally, take things professionally and think through, is there a structural or systemic problem that's causing this? This situation I'm making personal, is it actually something else that's causing it? I think very helpful for us.
Yeah. Yeah. So, so in closing, we're looking forward to coming up next Sunday, right? That we start our new series through 1 Peter. Right?
That's right.
So encourage people to be reading through the book. I can't remember if we're doing this as elders or if we're encouraging the church to do this, but to be reading through it systematically as we go.
Yeah, once we launch our life groups, I think part of that is because we're going to be discussing the sermons is every week reading through the book of First Peter.
Yeah,
because that's going to be our rhythm.
I knew we had talked about that at some place, so that was where it's coming in. So September 21st, our life groups will start up, and that will be a chance for you to
January 21st.
What did I say?
September.
It's in a different. It doesn't feel like September out there. So anyway, sorry.
That's probably the weather's messing us up, but that's about to change tomorrow.
Yeah. We'll see. They're predicting a bad one, but we'll probably get like 3 inches of rain.
Right. Yeah.
Anyway, well, good to be back together again, and Lord willing, we'll be back next week. So we'll see you.
Thanks.